This is Stage Left Planet, and I'm your host, Warita Winbush. And today we will be discussing the first case launched in the United States to declare assisted suicide unlawful and unconstitutional. It is a review of Alex Shadenberg, Executive Director of Euthanasia Coalition, Euthanasia Prevention Coalition's article, court case launched to declare assisted suicide unlawful and unconstitutional in the U.S. Now, this case was launched by the United Spinal Association, not dead yet, not dead yet, Institute for Patients' Rights, Communities Actively Living Independent and Free, Lottie Van Hook, and Ingrid Tischer. In California, to strike down the California assisted suicide with the goal of the case going to the United States Supreme Court to strike down assisted suicide laws throughout the U.S. Indeed, Virginia, I think that was Virginia. Let me look to make certain. Pretty certain it's Virginia though. That's one of my grandmother's first name, Virginia. Let's see. Yeah. But well, okay, we'll come back to that. But let's see. In this case, they are stating that American laws, and the case says that assisted suicide laws are situated within a long history of American state laws and practices directly harming and discriminating against people with disabilities on the grounds that those people's lives are not as worthy of protected as others. This is true when you look again, when you look at Margaret Sanger, right? Look at her speech, My Way to Peace, basically. You look at her speech, My Way to Peace, you read her literature, and she speaks of people with disabilities as those being unfit to procreate, those being dysgenic, that basically should be quarantined, placed in quarantine from society to the extent of being placed in what many basically would say are concentration camps. That is what she promoted, right? And the Euthanasia Prevention Coalition is absolutely right. They're absolutely right. It creates a two-tier system in which those who are deemed to be fit to procreate, well, no, those who are deemed to be fit to live, whose lives are more worthy of living because of some weird standard of perfection set by man, will be endangered, legally endangered, because once you go down the road of assisted suicide, the road of euthanasia, right, in the legal system, patient rights and the rights of their families become a major issue. They are central to whether or not these laws are ethical, right? Because there's such thing as involuntary passive euthanasia, in which a person who may not have even expressed that they would rather their lives be ended, their right, their life, their listen, doctors and even loved ones may have the right to make that decision. And that's unfair because that person can't speak or advocate for themselves. And then just because the doctor thinks or their guardian or the family member that advocates for them thinks that they should be or feel like okay their quality of life is going down, that doesn't mean that person feels that way. That doesn't mean that person is not willing to fight. When my mother was in the hospital and she was like gravely ill. She was very ill. She passed away. Her doctors, particularly the palliative care doctors, basically kept trying to convince me to end her life. I was sick. I couldn't get to the hospital or even walk or get around the hospital like I would have been able to have done. But when they called me over the phone, I specifically expressed every time, do not end her life if she needs because she had issues with her kidneys. And I told them, do not end her life. If she needs a kidney transplant, I'm willing to give her my kidney. If you can cut my head off and give it to her if you have to. Do not pull the plug on her. Let her fight. Because I knew that's what she would have wanted. Say, let her fight for her life. Okay, give her a chance to heal. If it's God's will for her to do that. Only God makes that decision. And that's my point of view. Okay. My personal point of view. Only God makes that decision. So that is what I told them. They tried to evade me, particularly when Hurricane Ida came hit Baton Rouge, and I had a phone with Family Mobile at Walmart, and my reception was not good. My calls weren't coming through, and calls wasn't coming through. Wi-Fi was up and down. And so they were contacting my other relatives, discussing her situation with them. The relative I told them to speak with is a nurse practitioner. They didn't want to speak with her at all. Matter of fact, they told me if they had to speak with her, that they wouldn't call me and tell me nothing else about my mother. But yeah, my cousin who has really no medical background whatsoever other than working in a call center for a medical insurance company, right? They wanted to talk to her, right? Though she didn't really comprehend everything that was being told to her. I told him, do not end my mother's life and let her fight for her life. God comforted me and assured me that he was going to make the best decision regarding her. So I trust God. I trust God. So this is why it's significant. It is not good to let anybody infringe upon the rights of the patient. It is not good. And honestly, now that I think about it, my mother went to the hospital. She had a lot of fluid, and they needed to remove the excess fluid. The excess fluid. They didn't do that. They eventually quit giving her like fluid medication and things to even remove the fluid. I was told by a nurse, and I kept telling them, "Hey, she has this fluid. It's got her where she can't. She's in a state where she can't walk." Now the thing is, this wasn't really a gradual thing. It's like it started happening all of a sudden, rapidly. You know, like within about a month. And I insisted to my mother, you have to go to your doctor. You have to go to the hospital. I wanted her to go to the hospital where her doctor was. But when we called the ambulance, they took her to this slaughterhouse on the other side of town. And these people, instead of, because my mother left, she didn't have any breathing problems. She get to the hospital, all of a sudden she had breathing problems. And she had breathing problems, and they kept giving her the BiPAP mask, and they had it turned real high. It was difficult for her to breathe. She kept taking the mask off, and they told me some weirdness about, oh, well, your mother's dealing with, she's obese, and this is why she's having these problems with her kidneys and stuff. And I'm like, look, and I told her, look, I told him the issue with my mother. They fought like bulls to ignore me. Even when she and I told them that she normally takes her medicine at night, so don't give it to her in the morning, because when she won't sleep at night, when they giving her that BiPAP mask, she'll be woke and taking the mask off. They ignored us. God will handle them. Now, and it is weird because my mother wasn't even in a hospital a good 2 weeks before these medical equipment companies kept harassing me about ordering breathing equipment for my mother. It's like it was a whole racket. Now, patients' rights have to be acknowledged, and the rights of family members who know they have the best interest at heart of that patient. Family members that know what that person's condition to be acknowledged. It is of the utmost importance. And euthanasia laws and practices can very much lead to the incentivization of a death industry in the medical practice. It really can. When we look at hospice care, that took place during COVID. Hospices that had COVID patients, they got more government money for the COVID patients than they did. Like they get about $800 a day for COVID patients that were there at the hospices, but about $200 a day for just your regular patient. When you look at because it was a big scandal, hospice care fraud. When you look at how hospitals were incentivized, and during the time my mother was in the hospital, at that time, it was during COVID, and it seems like she basically got treated as a COVID patient, though she didn't even have COVID. And I wonder about the vaccine. If those people required her to take a vaccine, I trusted two of my cousins to have the sense to take her to the hospital, because she didn't want to go, but she agreed to go to an outpatient clinic that is a part of a major hospital system here in Louisiana. I trusted them to go ahead after they took her to the outpatient clinic. Just go ahead and take her to the hospital while they had her with them in the car with them. Take her to Baton Rouge General. Common sense. These people are like 17, 16 years older than me. Nearly senior citizens are they now. And that is what I was expecting. When they came back with my mother, because this occurred shortly before she had to go to the hospital because she couldn't get up to walk. And for about a week, she just insisted on crawling around the house and stuff. And the neighbors across the street children, when she did get in a room in here, the neighbors across the street children kept disturbing her because they wouldn't stay in their yard. They all over here in this yard in the middle at night and all that stuff, screaming at the top of their lungs like they lost their mind. And that's not their fault. That's their silly parents' fault for letting them do that. Especially considering they got their own yard. They got a front yard, a backyard, a side yard, two side yards, and a porch with a fence around their yard that they can be in. My mother could even get her rest to try to recuperate, which was her plan. Could even get her rest because of them. Now, euthanasia laws, euthanasia, the culture of death, is being legalized and institutionalized in medicine. It is a arm of the medical industrial complex now. It truly is. It's an arm of the medical industrial complex, and we got to be vigilant and on top of this thing because number one, when you look at countries like Canada, right, when people seek government assistance, even for financial help, they are recommended assisted suicide for abject poverty. These are people who are trying to get the help to help themselves. A mother in Canada faced that. And also in Canada, this lady, I think her name is Sandra Eason, and her daughter's name Candace. Her daughter had a seizure, and the daughter's doctor kept trying to convince the daughter to choose assisted suicide. And the daughter said, no, I don't, say she didn't want to choose assisted suicide. And the mother, he talked to the mother. The mother said the same thing. Then he went back and talked to the daughter. The mother told him off. There was a woman who had dementia. She had dementia. And prior to her, at one point she had decided she wanted assisted suicide. Then she changed her mind. Her doctors got her family to hold her down while they euthanized her. Another woman was trying to visit her mother. I think it was during COVID. If it wasn't during COVID, she was trying to visit her mother at a nursing home. And she had a hard time getting in contact with her mother. Now, these two cases I'm discussing, or three cases I'm discussing, you can hear more about them in the Fatal Flaws documentary created by the Euthanasia Prevention Coalition. This woman said she went to go visit her mother. She went to go visit her mother, and I was about to visit her, and the staff told her her mother had died. She'd been euthanized because her mother was depressed. That's no reason to kill somebody. There's another guy he dealt with mental health issues. He dealt with mental health issues. I'm gonna tell you his name because I don't want to be like, there's another guy, but he dealt with mental health issues. Let's see. I'm gonna look him up. Canada. And there's a culture of death in society. Now, Alan Nichols was 61. That's his name, Alan Nichols. He was 61. Suffered with depression after having brain surgery when he was a child. And according to his family and his neighbor, he was too mentally unstable to make important decisions and relied upon them for help. And there were times when he was fine, yet most of the time he experienced severe depression. Aside from depression, Nichols was healthy. He was taken to a hospital after an episode. However, ignoring his medical history, doctors at British Columbia's Chilliwack Hospital approved his request for assisted suicide. Just before the euthanasia occurred, Allen demanded that it be stopped. He even begged his family to get him out of here. However, the hospital went forward with the procedure and rejected his family's request that the process be stopped due to his incapacity to make such a decision. This is awful. This is awful. And it's gotta stop. So there are many people who have experienced coercion and forced euthanasia against their will, and many on the basis of disability. Many on the basis of their disability are targeted for assisted suicide. This has got to stop. This is Stage Left Planet. And I'm your host, Warrita Wimbush. Focus on God.